The night outside Hawkins felt wrong in a way the town had learned to notice. Dustin Henderson was not supposed to be out this late. He knew that. Steve Harrington knew it too. Steve had been trying to act like the grown-up, which in Dustin's mind was already funny. They stood near Steve's beat-up car on the shoulder of a road that cut through the trees and fields. The air was cold. The sky was clear. Too clear. Dustin kept looking up anyway. "I'm telling you," Dustin said, voice low but fast. "If there's a gate thing again, we need to know first. We need eyes." Steve rubbed his face and sighed. "We have eyes. You have 2. I have 2. That's 4. That's enough." Dustin lifted his walkie-talkie like it was a badge. "We also have comms. And a plan." Steve stared at him. "You are 12. 13, Dustin corrected. "And I have seen more monsters than most adults will see in their whole lives." Steve had no good answer to that. He looked away, like he could find one in the trees. Then the air changed. It was not a sound at first. It was a pressure, like the world was holding its breath. Dustin's hair on his arms rose. "Steve," he whispered. Steve's shoulders tensed. "Yeah, I feel it." The sky above the road flashed. Not lightning. Something else. A thin, bright cut, like a crack made of light. It opened wider for half a second, and the night behind it looked wrong. Too dark. Too deep. Like a hole into a place with no stars. Something dropped out of it. It fell fast. It hit the ground hard, but not like a person who didn't know how to land. It hit, rolled, and was up in a blur. A shape moved through the trees with no wasted motion. Dustin's mouth went dry. Steve pulled a small bat from the car. He held it like it would help. His hands shook anyway. "Hello?" Steve called, trying to sound tough. It did not work. "Who's there?" Silence. Dustin's brain raced. Military? Monster? Something new? A shadow moved behind them. Steve spun and swung the bat. A hand caught it. Just caught it. Steve's arms jolted, like he'd hit a wall. Dustin froze. The person in front of them was tall, broad shoulders, black armor plates that looked like they belonged on a tank. A cape that hung heavy, not like cloth, but like a thick sheet. And a mask with pointed ears that made Dustin's brain scream one word he refused to say out loud. The stranger let go of the bat. Steve stumbled back. The stranger's eyes were white slits in the dark. His voice came out low and even. "Where am I?" Steve swallowed. "Hawkins." The stranger's head tilted, like he was sorting the word. "State?" "Indiana," Dustin said before Steve could. His voice cracked. He hated that it cracked. The stranger looked at Dustin. Not in a mean way, in a sharp way, like Dustin was a detail in a bigger picture. "What happened here?" the stranger asked. Dustin blinked. "That is a long story." The stranger's gaze flicked to the road, then the trees, then the sky. He was scanning, not just looking, mapping. He had gear too, a belt, compact tools, a device on his wrist, a small, dark object in his hand that he put away without Dustin seeing where. Steve tried again. "Okay, listen, man." The air tore. A screech ripped through the night, high and wet and hungry. Dustin's stomach dropped. From above the trees, shapes poured out like a swarm of knives with wings. Demobats. Steve's eyes widened. "Nope, nope, nope, nope." Dustin backed up. "We need—" The stranger moved first. His cape flared as he stepped forward, and in that second, Dustin saw something that made his chest tighten. No fear, no panic, just action. A small device popped into the stranger's hand. He threw it up and forward. It burst in the air with a sharp, loud crack, like a flash and a boom together. The demobats jerked and scattered, shrieking. Another device hit the ground. Smoke poured out, thick and fast. It swallowed the road. "Move," the stranger said. calm as a teacher. "Stay behind me." Steve grabbed Dustin's shoulder and pulled him back. "I am not arguing with Batman." He stopped himself, eyes wide, like he'd said a forbidden word. Dustin's brain lit up anyway. He wanted to scream, "I knew it!" But the stranger did not react to the word. He was already moving through the smoke. The demobats dove in, blind and angry. A line shot out from the stranger's wrist. It hooked a tree. He yanked, lifted, and swung up, letting the bats crash into empty air where he had been. He landed behind them, boots silent on dirt. He threw something small that beeped once. A high sound followed. Too high, almost painful. The demobats shrieked and pulled back, wings twitching like they wanted to tear off. Dustin covered his ears. Steve did too. The stranger did not. He moved with short steps and clean turns, like every motion was planned. He was not trying to punch them like a boxer. He was trying to control the space. One demobat broke through and snapped at Steve's face. Steve flinched, swinging the bat too late. The stranger grabbed the creature midair by its neck and wing joint, twisted, and slammed it to the ground. He did not crush it. He pinned it. He hit it once with something hard. The creature went limp, like it had been shut off. Dustin stared. "How?" "Run," the stranger said again. Dustin ran. Steve ran too, dragging Dustin toward the car. More bats screamed. The smoke thinned as the wind shifted. For a moment, Dustin saw the stranger stand in the open road, cape trailing behind him like a shadow with weight. Above him, the demobats circled, furious, confused. Then the stranger threw one last device, a burst of light, a pop, and a thin net of cable that snapped open between two trees. The swarm rushed in and tangled, wings caught. Several crashed to the ground, screeching. The stranger did not stay to watch them struggle. He was gone again, slipping into the trees like he had never been there. Dustin and Steve reached the car. Steve fumbled the keys. His hands were shaking so badly he dropped them once. Dustin looked back. In the dark between the trees, two white eye slits watched them for 1 second. Then they vanished. And far away, in a place that was not the normal world, something else noticed the new shape on the board. A mind like a cold hand brushed the edge of a foreign thought. Not a child, not a soldier, not a scientist. A man who lived in fear and used it like a tool. Vecna's presence did not speak in words. It tasted, and it smiled without a mouth. By morning, Hawkins was already buzzing in the way it buzzed when something bad had happened, but nobody could agree on what. Steve's living room was full. It was not supposed to be. Dustin had called people. Steve had tried to stop him. It did not work. Mike, Lucas, Max, and Will sat close together like they could share courage if their knees touched. Nancy stood by the window, arms crossed, eyes sharp. Robin leaned against the wall, spinning a pen between her fingers, like she could stab the air with it if needed. Joyce hovered near Will, hands always half raised, ready to pull him close. Hopper stood in the center of the room like a rock in a river. He did not sit. He watched everyone. His jaw was tight. Steve paced. Dustin talked too fast, pointing with both hands like he was telling a story at top speed before someone could stop him. "I'm telling you, he fell out of the sky," Dustin said. Like a portal, but not like our portal. It was different. And then he just was there. And the bats came, and he had these things, like gadgets, and he... Hopper cut in. "Slow down." Dustin huffed. "I am being perfectly slow," Hopper repeated, and the room obeyed him without meaning to. Dustin took a breath. He tried again, but calmer. "We saw a guy. A masked guy. Tall, armor, cape. He saved us." Steve nodded fast. "He did, and he did it like it was nothing. Like he's done that kind of thing 1,000,000 times." Robin raised her eyebrows. "A masked guy with armor and a cape. In Hawkins. Great. That's super normal." Nancy's voice was flat. Did you see his face? No, Steve said. Mask. Lucas looked at Dustin. How do you know he wasn't military? Dustin answered like he'd been waiting for the question. Because military guys yell. They point guns. This guy didn't. He asked questions. Like a detective. Hopper's eyes narrowed at that word. Will sat very still, looking down at his hands. The air felt wrong, he said quietly. Did it feel wrong? Dustin nodded at once. Yes. Joyce's face tightened, like before. Hopper turned away, gaze fixed on nothing for a moment. He hated that feeling. He hated that the town kept getting pulled back into it. The door at the front of the house creaked. Everyone froze. Steve stopped pacing. The handle turned. Hopper moved first. He drew his gun and stood between the door and the kids. The door opened. A man stepped in. Same armor, same cape, same mask with pointed ears. It looked even stranger in daylight, because daylight did not make him less frightening. It made him clearer. He moved like he belonged in shadows, not in a living room with bad wallpaper. Hopper aimed the gun at his chest. Don't take another step. The masked man stopped. He did not raise his hands. He did not flinch. He looked at Hopper's gun like it was just another fact. His voice was controlled. I'm not here to hurt anyone. Hopper's voice came out rough. That's what they all say. The masked man's head turned slightly. His eyes swept the room. He clocked the kids, the adults, the exits, the windows, the phone on the table, the walkie-talkie on the couch. He did it in seconds. You're the local law, he said, and it was not a guess. Hopper didn't answer. The masked man took one slow step forward anyway. Hopper's finger tightened. Joyce grabbed Hopper's sleeve. Jim! Hopper didn't look at her. I said don't. The masked man stopped again. You have a problem here, he said. It isn't me. Mike found his voice. Are you a superhero? Max muttered. Oh my God. The masked man looked at Mike. No. Dustin blinked. What? I'm not a hero, the masked man said. I'm someone who stops people from hurting others. Robin stared. That's the same thing. No, the masked man said. The way he said it made the difference feel important. Nancy stepped forward. Then, who are you? The masked man's jaw moved under the mask, like he was choosing what to give and what to keep. A traveler, he said. Dustin's face lit up. So you are from another? Hopper snapped. Enough! Hopper kept the gun up. Name. The masked man did not answer right away. Silence stretched. Hopper's eyes hardened. No name, no trust. The masked man's voice stayed calm. Trust is earned. Hopper let out a bitter laugh. In this town, trust gets you killed. The masked man turned his head a fraction. Then you understand why I won't hand you my identity. Hopper's stare sharpened. He hated that the logic made sense. He hated it even more because it sounded like something he would say. Joyce spoke softly, but firm. He saved them. Dustin and Steve. He didn't have to. The masked man looked at Joyce. You're the mother. Joyce stiffened. Yes. You have a child who's been touched by this place, he said, and Will's shoulders tightened at the word touched. Joyce's eyes widened. How do you know that? Your face, he said simply. And his. He nodded at Will. Will swallowed. He didn't like being seen that easily. Hopper's voice lowered. You think you can walk in here and read people like a book? The masked man answered in the same tone. I can, and I need to, because your enemy uses fear. Dustin leaned forward like he was pulled by a magnet. Yes, the bats and the masked man cut him off. Not rude, just focused. Not just the creatures, the source, the planner. Something is choosing targets. Max's eyes narrowed. Choosing? Nancy's voice turned sharp. We've seen that before. Hopper's gun dipped a hair. Not much, but enough that Steve noticed. Steve let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. The masked man took that as permission to speak faster. I need information, he said. Timeline, locations, victims, patterns, anything you have. Robin blinked. You want our notes? I want your facts, he corrected. Mike glanced at the others. We have a lot. Good, the masked man said. Hopper's gun lowered another inch. You still haven't told me why you're here. The masked man's voice turned quieter. I didn't choose to come here. Lucas folded his arms. How did you come here then? The masked man looked at him. Something pulled me. Dustin's eyes went wide. Like a gate. Different, the masked man said again. But yes, a breach. Will's voice was small. The upside down. The masked man's head tilted, like he was placing a name onto a shape. That's what you call it. Joyce nodded quickly. Yes. The masked man turned his gaze to Hopper. If you want control, you won't get it by threatening me. You'll get it by understanding what you're facing. Hopper's jaw worked. He hated being cornered with logic in his own house. Nancy stepped closer, eyes bright with that familiar fire. If you're a detective, prove it. The masked man looked at her. Ask. Nancy pointed at Steve. Tell me what you can about him, without him speaking. Steve frowned. Hey. The masked man looked at Steve for 1 second. He's trying to act brave. He's scared. He feels responsible for them. He wasn't always like that. Steve went still. Nancy pointed at Robin. Her. Smart. Fast. Talks to hide nerves, the masked man said. Robin's mouth opened. She shut it. Okay, rude. Nancy pointed at Hopper. Him. The masked man's gaze held on Hopper longer. He's exhausted. He's angry at himself. He's lost people. He'll do anything to protect them. The room went quiet. Hopper's eyes burned. That's enough. The masked man nodded once, like he'd made his point. Now we work. They moved to a different place, because Hopper did not want this talk in Steve's living room anymore. By afternoon, Hopper had brought them to the sheriff's station. He said it was for control. It was also because it made him feel less like the ground was moving under him. The masked man did not argue. He followed like a shadow that chose to cooperate. Hopper cleared a back room. He set a table. He put down folders, maps, and whatever papers he could find from the last times. It wasn't enough. It never felt like enough. The masked man looked at the mess like it was a puzzle dumped out of a box. He took out a small roll from his belt. Not a gun. Tools. Compact. Clean. Dustin leaned in. Oh my God. He has like a portable lab. Hopper shot him a look. Dustin. What? Dustin whispered. It's true. The masked man ignored them. He laid out strips, small glass vials, and a handheld scanner-like device that hummed softly. Robin watched, fascinated despite herself. Okay, where did you get that? The masked man's answer was short. I make what I need. Joyce hugged herself, eyes on Will. Can it tell us if it's coming back? It can tell us what it leaves behind, the masked man said. Nancy set down a stack of notes. We have dates, attacks, people who got hurt. The masked man nodded. Good. He started building a board on the wall. He used tape, string, pins. He did it fast. He did it like he'd done it 100 times. Mike whispered to Lucas. He's like if Hopper had money. Lucas whispered back, or like if Hopper never slept. Dustin was already labeling in his head. We should call him. Hopper's voice cut. Don't. Dustin sighed. Fine. The masked man listened anyway. He didn't react. But he moved a pin from one location to another, like he'd heard the whole thing. What are you doing? Nancy asked. Correcting your map, he said. Nancy bristled. Excuse me? He pointed with 2 fingers. You marked the old lab entrance here. It's wrong. The ground slope doesn't match the building footprint. Your door would open into a hill. Robin blinked. How would you? He tapped the map. The town plans. In your folders. The paper is old. The stamp is still clear. The county changed the road in '78. Hopper stared at him. How do you know that? The masked man didn't look away from the map. Because someone tried to hide it, and hidden things matter. Hopper felt a chill crawl up his back, because that was true in every way. Will shifted, face pale. It's not just places, he said. It's feelings. The masked man turned to him. His voice softened a fraction. Tell me. Will swallowed. He hated being the one who carried the warning, but he did it anyway. Sometimes it feels like something is looking through you, like it's inside your head. Joyce's eyes filled. Will! The masked man nodded, not surprised. It uses minds. Dustin whispered, Vecna. The masked man paused at the name. That's what you call a planner. Max's face tightened. She looked away. He's real. The masked man's gaze moved across the kids. He saw something in their faces that adults didn't always see. Not just fear. Practice. These kids were veterans of something nobody should be veterans of. He spoke to Hopper. How many times has this happened? Hopper's voice came out flat. Too many. And your government? The masked man asked. Hopper's eyes narrowed. Don't. You have someone above you, the masked man said. Someone who wants control. Hopper's jaw clenched. Yeah. The masked man reached into his belt and pulled out a small device, like a compact camera. He placed it on the table. It showed a fuzzy image, a smear of dark residue on bark, claw marks, a wing imprint. From last night, he said. Your creatures bleed. That matters. Robin leaned in. So you can track them. I can track patterns, he corrected. Creatures are tools. Joyce whispered. Tools for what? The masked man's gaze lifted to the board, to the pins, to the strings. For pressure, for fear, for openings. Nancy's hands balled. So what do we do? The masked man turned, cape shifting behind him. We stopped treating this like a ghost story. He pointed at the board. We treat it like a case. Hopper's eyes narrowed again. And your plan is? The masked man didn't answer right away. He walked to the station's small supply shelf, pulled out a cheap flashlight, and clicked it on and off. Light matters, he said. Dustin raised a finger. Yes, light and music and... The masked man looked at Dustin. Music! Max's face went tight. It helped. Once. The masked man stored that fact. Good. He pointed at the flashlight again. We build safe zones. We build signals. We build rules that keep people alive. Hopper let out a breath. You think you can run this town? The masked man's voice was calm. No. I think you've been running it alone. That's why you're tired. Hopper didn't like how true that felt. The back door of the station opened. A man in a neat jacket stepped in with another man behind him. The neat man looked like a doctor, trying to dress like he wasn't a doctor. Dr. Owens. Hopper's whole body stiffened. You've got to be kidding me. Owens' smile was careful. Jim. Behind Owens, a soldier looked past the room like he was hunting for targets. His eyes landed on the masked man, and his posture changed. Alert. Ready. Owens spoke smoothly. We heard reports. Unusual reports. Hopper stepped forward. This is my station. Owens nodded like he agreed, but his eyes didn't. We need to talk. The masked man did not move. He stood like a statue with a pulse. Owens looked at him. And you must be the new variable. The masked man's voice was flat. I'm not yours. Owens held up both hands. No one said that. The soldier behind Owens did not relax. His hand drifted toward his weapon. Hopper saw it. Don't. Hopper snapped. Owens's eyes flicked to Hopper. "Jim, please, we are trying to keep people safe." The masked man spoke, low and sharp. "Then stop lying to them." Owens's smile faltered. Robin muttered under her breath, "Oh wow, he's going for the throat." The masked man stepped toward Owens, slow and controlled. "Your cover stories create panic. Panic feeds the enemy." Owens blinked. "That's a theory." The masked man's eyes narrowed. "No, that's a pattern." Owens looked at Hopper, as if Hopper could solve this for him. Hopper didn't. Owens tried again. "Careful. We have resources, equipment, a secure place. We can help you operate safely." The masked man's response was instant. "I don't need your cage." Owens exhaled. "You're making this harder." The masked man's voice stayed level. "You made this hard years ago." Hopper felt his stomach twist. He didn't know who this masked man was, but he sounded like he understood the shape of a cover-up. He sounded like he'd hunted systems before. Owens turned to the kids. "You shouldn't be here." Nancy lifted her chin. "We're always here." Owens's gaze returned to the masked man. "What do you want?" The masked man answered. "Simple. Truth. And space to work." Owens studied him. For the first time, fear flashed behind Owens's eyes. Not fear of a monster. Fear of a person who could not be bribed. Owens nodded once. "Fine. For now." The soldier took a step, like he didn't agree. Hopper stepped into his path. "You heard him." The soldier glared at Hopper. "We can't trust him." Hopper's eyes burned. "He saved kids last night." The soldier's jaw tightened. "So did we." Hopper almost laughed. It came out like a harsh breath instead. "No, you didn't." Owens placed a hand on the soldier's arm. "We will observe," he said, voice calm again. "We will. Be ready." The masked man turned away like Owens had already stopped existing. He looked at the board, then at Will, then at Max. "You've seen the planner," he said. Max's throat tightened. "Yeah." "Does it speak?" he asked. Max shook her head once. "Not like a normal person." The masked man nodded, like he expected that. "It will try to use what you regret." Will's voice was quiet. "It already does." The room chilled. For a second, the lights in the station flickered. Not a power outage. Not a bad wire. Something else. The masked man's head snapped up. He felt it too. A pressure behind the eyes. A cold touch along the edge of thought. Not pain. A probe. He didn't show it on his face, but his body went still in a way only a trained fighter went still. In the back of his mind, a memory tried to surface without permission. A dark alley. A gunshot. 2 bodies falling. He clenched his jaw. He did not let it pull him under. His voice stayed steady. "Everyone out of this room." Hopper frowned. "What?" "Now," the masked man said, sharp. Hopper didn't like taking orders, but the tone was not ego. It was warning. Hopper waved the kids back. They moved. Owens hesitated. "What is—" The masked man turned his head toward the empty corner of the room, eyes fixed on nothing. Then he spoke into the air like it was a person. "I know you're listening," he said. The flicker stopped. The pressure eased. But the message was clear. Something on the other side had noticed him. And it wasn't curious. It was planning. The quarantine zone near the old lab was not on any normal map. It was fences, floodlights, and men with rifles acting like they could shoot a nightmare. Batman watched from the tree line as dusk fell. He had learned the town's edges fast. He had learned the people too. The kids were brave but reckless. The sheriff was stubborn but honest. The government man was polite but slippery. And the enemy was patient. He listened to the wind. He watched the patterns of soldiers walking. He saw where they were bored, where they were tense, where they were pretending nothing was wrong. He did not like any of it. From behind him, a soft crunch of leaves. Hopper stepped out, holding a flashlight low so it didn't shine far. He wore his jacket like armor, even though it wasn't. "You always sneak up on people?" Hopper asked. Batman didn't look back, only when they deserve it. Hopper snorted. "Cute." Batman's voice stayed calm. "You shouldn't be here." Hopper's eyes narrowed. "Neither should you." Batman glanced at him. "Then we agree." Hopper came closer, staying in the shadow. "Owen says this zone is stable." Batman's answer was flat. "Owens is wrong." Hopper looked past the fence. "You got a plan?" Batman nodded once. "I have a goal. I need a sample. I need to know what's changing." Hopper frowned. "Changing?" Batman's gaze sharpened on the floodlights. The bats were a test. They reacted to sound tools. They will adapt. Hopper's jaw tightened. "Great." From behind them, a whispery voice. "So, when you say sample..." Dustin appeared with Steve, both trying to act like they hadn't been following. Steve had a duffel bag that clinked like it held junk. Hopper spun. "Are you kidding me?" Dustin lifted his hands. "We are support." "You are grounded," Hopper growled. Steve raised a finger. "He told me to come." Hopper glared at Batman. "You did?" Batman's voice was even. "I asked for equipment." Steve opened the duffel bag. "This is what we got." Batman looked inside. Flashlights, duct tape, fishing line, a small toolbox, a cheap handheld radio, a pack of batteries, and a camping mirror. Batman stared for 1 second too long. Dustin smiled like he'd delivered treasure. "Okay, I know it's not like your usual rich guy bat stuff, but..." Batman cut in. "It will do." Steve let out a breath. "That's the nicest thing you've said all day." Batman didn't respond. They moved along the tree line until they had a clear view of a weak point near the fence. A corner where the lights didn't fully reach. A spot where a guard leaned too hard on routine. Batman watched the guard's breathing. The shift of weight. The way his hand rested on his gun. Then Batman threw a small pebble to the right, far enough to make a sound. The guard turned. Batman moved like a shadow with a purpose. A hand clamped over the guard's mouth, a quick pressure point. The guard's body went slack before he could shout. Batman lowered him gently. Not cruel, not careless. Hopper's eyes widened in spite of himself. He'd seen people get knocked out before, not like that. Not that clean. Dustin whispered, "That was so..." Hopper hissed, "Quiet." They slipped through the gap. Inside, the air smelled like bleach and metal, like people trying to scrub away something that didn't want to be scrubbed away. Steve shivered. "I hate this place." Batman's voice was low. "Stay close. Follow my hand signals." Dustin's eyes lit up. "Hand signals, yes!" Batman moved forward, scanning. He had a small device in his palm now, reading heat and movement. The screen was tiny, but enough. Nothing. Then something. A faint cold patch ahead. Not normal cold. A cold that felt wrong, even through gear. Batman stopped. He raised a hand. They froze. Hopper leaned in, whispering, "You feel that?" Batman nodded once. The air shimmered, like heat over a road, except it was cold. A thin tear opened, low to the ground, like a wound in the world. And the smell hit them. Rot. Wet earth. Old blood. Hopper's face drained. Oh, hell. From the tear, a hand came through. Not human. Long fingers, dark, slick skin. Then another. A demogorgon pulled itself out, slow and strong, like it was climbing from a pit. Behind it, the tear widened. More movement. A second demogorgon. Then a third. Steve's breath caught. "No, no, no!" Batman's hand shot out and grabbed Steve's shirt, holding him back. His voice stayed calm. "Don't run yet." Steve stared at him like he was crazy. "What do you mean, don't run yet?" Batman's eyes stayed on the creatures. "They're not hunting. Not yet." Dustin's whisper came out like a squeak. "How can you tell?" Batman pointed with his chin. "They're looking around, testing, waiting for a signal." The Demogorgons lifted their heads. The flower of teeth opened like a terrible plant. They sniffed the air. One turned toward the fences, toward the floodlights, toward the soldiers. It took a step. A soldier on a nearby platform saw it. He shouted. A gun fired. The bullet hit the Demogorgon's shoulder. It didn't slow down. Then the base erupted into noise. Sirens, lights, boots pounding. More gunfire. Batman's jaw tightened. They just rang the dinner bell. The Demogorgon lunged at the platform. It leapt higher than any normal animal should, grabbing metal with long fingers and hauling itself up with raw strength. The soldier screamed. Batman moved. He sprinted, cape tight behind him, and launched a grapnel line. It hooked the platform rail. He yanked and swung up in one motion, landing between the soldier and the creature. The soldier fired again, shaking so hard he almost hit Batman. Batman slapped the rifle down and shoved the soldier back. "Move!" The Demogorgon struck, claws slashing. Batman ducked under the swipe and drove a compact shock device into its side. A sharp crackle. The creature roared, jerking away. It was strong, stronger than any man. Batman didn't try to wrestle it. He used angles. He used timing. He threw a pellet at its feet. Smoke burst up. The Demogorgon snarled, disoriented. Batman grabbed the soldier and shoved him toward the ladder. "Down, now!" The soldier scrambled. Below, more soldiers poured in, firing wildly. One bullet hit the platform support and sparked. Another hit a light, shattering it. Darkness spread. And in the darkness, the Demogorgon moved better than they did. Hopper climbed up behind Batman, gun raised, face set in grim anger. "Back off!" He fired twice. The shots hit. The creature flinched, but didn't fall. Hopper swore. Batman's eyes flicked to the tear in the air. It was still open. More shapes pressed behind it, like the world on the other side was pushing. "Too many," Hopper growled. Batman's voice stayed controlled. "We don't fight all of them here." Steve and Dustin were below, trapped between shouting soldiers and the fence line. Steve swung his bat at nothing, just trying to feel useful. Dustin yelled, "We need, like, a cleric." "No," Hopper shouted back. "You need to get out." Then the ground shook. Not an earthquake, a pulse. The lights flickered again. Some soldiers screamed and grabbed their heads, like they'd heard something inside their skulls. Batman felt it too. A pressure. A cold whisper of a thought. Fear. Batman clenched his teeth. A Demogorgon turned its head toward him like it sensed his resistance. And then something else hit the battlefield. A hard, invisible shove. The Demogorgon jerked sideways, slammed into the railing, and nearly toppled off the platform. Batman's eyes snapped toward the source. At the edge of the zone, near a broken section of wall, stood a girl with a shaved head and a hospital gown under a jacket. 11. Her hand was out, fingers spread. Her face was tight with focus. Blood began to trickle from her nose. Mike's voice echoed from behind her. "Elle!" She didn't look at him. She looked at the monster like it was a problem to solve. Batman saw her stance, the strain, the cost. He jumped down from the platform, landing in a crouch, then sprinted toward her. Hopper stared, stunned. "What the—" Another Demogorgon lunged at 11. Batman threw a small disc that clamped onto the creature's chest. It beeped once. A high sound punched the air, not loud but sharp. The Demogorgon spasmed, stumbling like its balance had been stolen. 11 shoved again. The creature flew backward into a stack of crates, crushing wood like it was paper. Soldiers yelled. Some aimed at 11. Batman moved between the rifles and the girl without hesitation. He raised his voice, commanding, "Stop firing!" A soldier barked back, "Move aside!" Batman did not move. "If you shoot her, you lose." The soldier hesitated. because there was something in Batman's tone that did not feel like a threat. It felt like a fact. Hopper pushed through the chaos, shouting, "Stand down, all of you!" The soldiers didn't fully listen, but they slowed. Eleven's breathing grew ragged. She held her hand out, trying to keep the gate from widening. The tear in the air pulsed, pushing harder. Batman turned his head slightly toward 11, voice low so only she could hear. "Can you hold it?" 11's eyes were wide and fierce. Yes. Blood ran more from her nose. Batman watched her for half a second. Then he did what he always did. He made a plan in the middle of the storm. He snapped his head to Dustin and Steve, who were scrambling behind a concrete barrier. "Flashlights! All of them! Now!" Dustin blinked. "Why?" "Do it!" Batman barked. Steve didn't argue. He grabbed every flashlight from the duffel bag and clicked them on. Dustin did the same. They aimed them toward the tear, making a harsh cone of light. It didn't close the gate, but it made the air around it twitch, like the Upside Down didn't like being exposed. Batman pulled the camping mirror from Steve's bag, shoved it into Steve's hands, and pointed. "Angle it. Reflect the light into the opening." Steve gaped. Like a sunbeam?" "Now," Batman said. Steve did it. A bright slice of light stabbed into the tear. The ripples shuddered. The Demogorgon snarled, confused. 11's face twisted with effort. She pushed, and this time the push felt stronger, like the light gave her something to lean on. Hopper shouted orders to the soldiers. "Back up! Clear the line! Stop shooting!" Some listened. Some didn't. 1. Demogorgon charged straight at the barrier where Mike and the others had arrived behind 11. Mike stepped forward without thinking. Batman moved faster. He threw a grapnel line, snagged the Demogorgon's shoulder ridge, and yanked hard. Not to pull it to him, but to pull it off balance. It stumbled. 11 slammed it with her power again. It crashed into the fence and tore it open like paper. Soldiers panicked. A few started firing into the opening, bullets sparking off metal and dirt. Batman swore under his breath. One bad shot could hit a kid. One bad shot could hit 11. One bad shot could break the only chance they had to control the gate. He sprinted across the open ground, kicked one rifle barrel down, shoved another soldier back, and ripped a magazine out of a third weapon so fast the man just stared at his empty hands. "Are you insane?" Batman snapped. The soldier shouted, "It's a monster!" Batman's voice came like steel. "And you're making it worse!" Another pulse hit the air. This one came with a sound in Batman's head. Not words. A slow ticking, like a clock counting down. Max flinched hard and grabbed her temples. Will gasped like he'd been punched in the chest. 11's eyes flickered, and for one terrifying second, her hand wavered. The tear widened. A shadow moved behind it. Not a Demogorgon this time. Something larger. Something that felt like a presence more than a body. Batman's stomach tightened. He didn't know its name yet, but he could feel the idea of it. A planner. A king. A thing that wanted minds. Batman stepped closer to 11 and lowered his voice again. "Look at me." 11's eyes snapped to him for a second, shocked by the command. Batman pointed at the ground between them. "Breathe. In, out. Stay here. Don't chase what it shows you." 11's breath hitched, then steadied, tiny and fast. Batman didn't look away from the tear. He spoke into it, the same way he'd spoken into the empty corner of the station. "I know you're there," he said. The tear trembled. The shadow behind it paused. Then it pulled back, like it didn't want to show its full face yet. The Demogorgons stopped pushing. Not because they were defeated, because someone told them to wait. 11 shoved one last time. The tear narrowed, not closed, but thinner, less stable. Batman threw 2 more devices into the edges of the rip, small anchors that clamped and hummed, not sealing it, but making its shape less wild. Hopper grabbed Batman's arm. "Can you shut it?" Batman's answer was honest. "Not like this." 11's knees buckled. Mike rushed forward, catching her. Batman stepped back so Mike could hold her, but his eyes stayed on the tear. The rip quivered. Then, slowly, it pulled inward, like a wound trying to scab. Not fully, not safe, but enough that the monsters on this side stopped coming. The Demogorgons already here retreated, backing into shadow and smoke, slipping away through gaps and fences and broken walls, like they were trained dogs called back to heel. The soldiers shouted. Some chased. Batman didn't. He watched the pattern. He watched the timing. He watched the choice. This was not a random attack. This was a message. He turned his head slightly, looking at 11, at the kids, at Hopper, at the fearful soldiers. Then he looked at the thin, pulsing rip in the air. His voice was quiet, but firm. "It learned we're here," he said. Hopper's face was pale. "What?" Batman's eyes stayed fixed on the tear, on the darkness behind it. "It tested us," Batman said, "and now it knows what we can do." And far away, behind the veil, Vecna listened. Not to words, to fear, to discipline, to the new kind of resistance that had landed in Hawkins like a falling shadow. The game had changed, and the next move would not be loud. It would be personal. Hopper hated the quiet that came after a fight. It was never real quiet. It was just the time when people realized what almost happened. The quarantine zone was a mess of smoke, broken fence, and mud torn up by boots. Floodlights still flickered. Men shouted into radios that didn't help. Some carried the wounded. Some just stood there, staring at nothing like their minds were still stuck on the wrong side of the rip. Hopper walked past a stack of crates and saw claw marks in metal like someone had dragged a knife through a can. He swallowed hard. On the far side, near the thin tear in the air, the masked man stood with his back half turned. He was still. Too still. Like he had a wall inside him, and he kept everything behind it. 11 sat on the ground near Mike. Her head leaned against his shoulder. Blood had dried under her nose. Her eyes were open, but tired, like she had run for miles without moving. Mike kept whispering to her. Hopper couldn't hear the words. It didn't matter. Mike was doing what Mike always did, holding the line with his voice. Soldiers pushed toward the tear with heavy gear and bigger guns, like they could scare the air into obeying. Hopper stepped in front of them. "Back up," he snapped. "No one touches that." A captain glared at him. "Sheriff, move." Hopper didn't move. "No." The captain's hand drifted toward his sidearm. A low voice cut through the noise. "He's right." The masked man didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. The tone carried. The captain turned. "And who the hell are you?" The masked man's head tilted. "The person who kept this from getting worse." The captain scoffed. "We don't take orders from—" The masked man stepped closer. One step. The cape shifted like a heavy curtain. The white eye slit stayed on the captain's face. "You fired into a field with civilians," the masked man said. "You almost shot children." The captain's jaw tightened. "We were under attack." "You panicked," the masked man corrected. Hopper expected the captain to explode. He didn't. He didn't because the words were true, and everyone nearby knew it. Dr. Owens arrived with 2 men in clean jackets and a calm face that didn't match the smoke behind him. He walked like he owned the ground, like rules still mattered here. "Jim," Owens said, polite. Hopper's eyes burned. "Owens." Owens glanced at the tier. "We'll secure it." The masked man spoke again. "If you secure it the same way you always do, more people die." Owens' smile thinned. "We can discuss tactics later." "No," the masked man said. "Now." Owens looked at him like he was looking at a tool that refused to be used. "I appreciate your help," Owens said carefully. "But this is federal." The masked man didn't flinch. "This is human." Owen's eyes flicked to 11, to the kids, to Hopper. He lowered his voice. "We have to control the story. If people panic, they will panic if you lie," the masked man said. Owens took a slow breath. "We can keep them safe." Hopper almost laughed. He didn't. He couldn't. The masked man's head turned slightly toward Hopper. Not a look that asked permission. A look that shared weight. Hopper felt it land on him anyway. Owens stepped closer, voice low, like a deal was being offered. "We can give you a secure site, equipment, specialists. We can help you do this properly." The masked man answered without hesitation. "You want to study me?" Owens didn't deny it. The masked man's voice stayed calm. "Find another project." Owens' jaw worked. Then he nodded once. "Fine. For now." Hopper watched Owens walk away, already talking into a radio like he was building a wall of words around the truth. He looked back at the masked man. Hopper's voice came out rough. "You're making enemies." The masked man turned his head. "Good. Enemies are honest." Hopper didn't know if he agreed, but he couldn't fully argue. As the night wore on, the zone got tighter. More fences, more men, more lights. Owens kept people away from the tear. He told them it was chemical damage and structural failure. He said there was no threat. Hopper saw the faces of the soldiers who had watched a Demogorgon climb a metal platform like it was a tree. They didn't believe a word. And across town, rumors moved faster than truth. A Batman, a monster hunter, a government weapon, a devil. Hopper heard it from a gas station clerk at dawn. He heard it from a deputy who tried to pretend he hadn't heard it too. By noon, a couple of cars sat near the road that led to the quarantine area, with people inside holding cameras like they were waiting for a show. Hopper wanted to scream. The masked man didn't scream. He watched. He listened. He adjusted. That part, Hopper understood. Batman didn't sleep. Not because he couldn't. Because he wouldn't. Not yet. He stood in the back room of the sheriff's station again, looking at the board. More pins now. More strings. More notes in small, neat writing. He had added a new column. He didn't name it in big words. He just wrote it the way he thought. Triggers. Light. Sound. Heat. Emotion. He hated that last one. It wasn't a gear problem. It wasn't a lock to pick. It was a mind. He ran a small scan over the residue he'd collected. It wasn't like anything in Gotham. Different cells. Different decay. Different smell. Different rules. He didn't like different rules. Behind him, the door creaked. He didn't turn. He already knew who it was. The footsteps were heavy and annoyed. Hopper came in, holding 2 cups of coffee. He set one on the table without asking. Batman looked at the cup like it was a clue. Hopper grunted. "It's coffee. Drink it." Batman didn't touch it. Hopper sighed. "Okay. Fine. Don't drink it." Batman's voice was low. "Owens is building a cover." Hopper leaned on the wall. "He always does." Batman glanced at Hopper. "And you let him." Hopper's face tightened. "You think I want to?" Batman didn't answer. He didn't need to. Hopper already knew. Hopper stared at the board. "So, what's your next move, traveler?" Batman's jaw shifted under the mask. He accepted the label without reacting. "We reduce panic," Batman said. "Panic feeds it." Hopper scoffed. "Tell that to Hawkins." Batman's voice stayed steady. "We train. We build routines. We build safe steps." Hopper frowned. "You want to train the town?" "I want to train the people who are already in this," Batman said. "They're the ones the enemy targets." Hopper's eyes hardened. "You mean the kids?" Batman met his gaze. "Yes." Hopper's voice rose. "No." Batman didn't back off. "They're already in danger." Hopper stepped forward. I said no. They are not soldiers. Batman's voice stayed calm but firmer. Neither am I asking them to be. I'm asking them to survive. Hopper stared at him, breathing hard. Batman didn't move. He let the anger burn out without feeding it. After a moment, Hopper's shoulders dropped a fraction. What does training look like? He asked, quieter. Batman pointed to the board. Buddy rules, safe rooms, signal words, grounding steps. Hopper blinked. Grounding? Batman's voice turned simpler. If it attacks the mind, you need anchors. Things that remind you what is real. Hopper's face tightened. Like music. Batman nodded once. Music. Light. A voice you trust. A task. A pattern. Anything that pulls you back. Hopper looked away like he hated that it made sense. Batman's gaze shifted to another note. Gov response. They will try to label me as a threat, Batman said. Hopper snorted. They already are. Batman's voice didn't change. Then we don't give them reasons. Hopper's eyes narrowed. Meaning? No break-ins, Batman said. Hopper stared at him. You just broke into a federal zone last night. Batman didn't blink. To stop children from dying. Hopper's mouth opened, then closed. Batman added, now we build cooperation where we can, and we plan for betrayal where we must. Hopper looked at him for a long moment. You sound like... He started. He stopped. Batman didn't ask him to finish. He already knew. Hopper sighed, then jerked his chin at the door. They're here. Batman turned slightly. Through the small window in the door, he saw shapes in the hall. Kids, teens, adults. Nancy first, eyes sharp. Robin beside her, pen behind her ear. Steve slouching like he was pretending not to care. Dustin bouncing on his toes, already talking at the air. Mike holding Eleven's hand. 11 walking slow, but steady. Hopper muttered, this is not a meeting I scheduled. Batman's voice was flat. It's a meeting we need. Nancy refused to sit like a child. She stood near the board and stared at it, taking it in fast. You made all of this. Overnight. Batman nodded. You brought the facts. I organized them. Robin leaned in, reading the notes. Okay, wow. You were either very helpful or very scary. Steve raised a hand. He's both. Dustin pointed at a strip of tape holding a paper up. Is that a timeline? Because we had a timeline. But yours has color coding. Batman ignored the excitement and looked at 11. You held the tear, Batman said. 11's eyes stayed on the floor for a second. Then she nodded once. Batman's voice softened just a little. It hurt. 11 nodded again. Batman watched her breathing, the way she held herself, like she was bracing for a hit, even while standing still. He'd seen that before. Not in kids, in soldiers, in victims who became fighters because nobody else would. Mike stepped forward. She can do it. She just needs... Batman lifted a hand, stopping him gently. I'm not questioning her strength. Mike's shoulders eased, but only a little. Batman turned to the group. If the enemy uses fear, we stop feeding it. Max crossed her arms. And how do we do that? Batman answered in short beats. We don't split up. We don't chase visions. We don't run alone into dark places. We keep light. We keep sound. We keep contact. Lucas frowned. Like rules. Batman nodded. Yes. Dustin's eyes lit up. Like a campaign handbook. Batman didn't react. He just kept going. If you feel it coming, ticking, pressure, cold, you say the word. Robin blinked. The word? Batman looked at Hopper. Choose it. Hopper's jaw worked. Why me? Because they trust you, Batman said. Hopper looked away, annoyed at being seen. Hopper muttered. Fine. The word is cab. Steve stared. Cab? Like a taxi? Hopper shrugged. It's stupid. You'll remember it. Dustin nodded fast. I will remember it. Batman continued. When you say it, everyone moves to light. Everyone checks their buddy. Nobody argues. Nancy lifted her chin. What about finding the source? We can't just hide forever. Batman met her gaze. We won't hide. We'll choose our fights. Nancy's eyes narrowed. And you choose. Batman didn't lie. I will plan. Hopper cut in. With me. Batman glanced at Hopper. With you. Hopper grunted like that was the best he could do for agreement. Robin raised a hand like she was in class. Question. The government people. They are going to freak out if you keep showing up in masks and stopping their plans. Batman's voice went cold again. Then we don't rely on them. Nancy stepped closer. Are you going to tell us who you are? The room tightened. Dustin held his breath. Batman looked at Nancy for a long moment. No. Dustin deflated like a balloon. Batman added, Not yet. Mike's eyes hardened. Why should we trust you then? Batman didn't get angry. He didn't get defensive. He gave Mike something real. Because I stayed, Batman said. Because I didn't run when the tear opened. Because I put myself between guns and your friend. Mike's jaw clenched. He couldn't fully argue with that. 11 looked up at Batman. Her eyes narrowed like she was trying to see behind the mask. You are sad, she said, simple. The room went quiet. Batman didn't answer. Hopper's voice came out low. 11 didn't look away. He is like us. Batman's hands curled once, then relaxed. He spoke carefully. I know what fear does. Max's voice turned sharp, quieter, but dangerous. Then you know what he does, she said, meaning Vecna. Batman nodded once. Yes. Will swallowed. He can get inside. Batman looked at Will. Then we build doors. Will blinked. Doors. Batman's voice stayed simple. In your mind. Doors you can close. It wasn't magic. It was training. It was control. It was what Batman had built in himself a long time ago. Robin stared at him like she wanted to laugh and couldn't. Okay. Mine doors. Cool. Batman turned back to the board. There's one more thing. The enemy is learning. Lucas frowned. Learning what? Batman pointed at a note. Sonic response shifted. The bats reacted to sound deterrence, Batman said. Then they pushed through anyway. That means they can adapt. Dustin whispered. That is bad. Batman nodded. So we adapt faster. That afternoon, Owens came to the station again. He brought 2 men in suits and 1 soldier who looked like he was made of straight lines and anger. The soldier's eyes kept scanning corners like he wanted to find a target just to feel calm. Owens kept smiling. Hopper met them at the front desk with a face like stone. Owens looked past him. We need to speak with a masked individual. Hopper's eyes narrowed. He's not a prisoner. Owens' smile didn't move. We're not treating him as one. The soldier behind Owens muttered, Not yet. Hopper's hand twitched. Batman stepped out of the back room before Hopper could explode. Owens' eyes brightened like he'd gotten what he came for. There you are. Batman's voice was flat. Say it. Owens spread his hands. I want to offer cooperation. Batman stared. Owens continued. We can give you access to labs, equipment, information. You're effective. We should combine efforts. Batman's tone didn't change. And in exchange? Owens paused a fraction too long. We'd need your background, identity, origin. Batman didn't blink. No. Owens' smile tightened. You're asking us to trust you. Batman answered. You're asking me to trust you. The soldier stepped forward. You don't get to say no. Batman's head turned toward him. I do. The soldier's jaw clenched. You're in our country. Batman's voice was calm but sharp. I'm in a town you failed to protect. Hopper felt a nasty spark of satisfaction at that. Owens held up a hand, calming the soldier like he was calming a dog. "Let's not do this," Owens said. Batman's eyes stayed on Owens. "You're afraid of me." Owens exhaled. "I'm cautious." Batman leaned in slightly. "You're afraid because I can't be owned." Owens didn't deny it. Batman spoke again. "You also think I'm a distraction." Owens' gaze flicked away. Batman continued. "You want the town to look at me, not at the tear." Owens' smile finally cracked. "We are trying to prevent panic." Batman's voice dropped lower. "Then stop spreading lies." Owens' eyes flashed. "You don't understand what it takes to keep order." Batman didn't raise his voice. "I understand it better than you think." For a moment, Owens looked like he wanted to ask, "Who are you?" Not for control. For real. Then the soldier's radio crackled with a sharp burst of noise. All of them heard it. A quick hiss, then a voice, shaky. "Sir, we've got reports of a man in a mask. People are saying he's connected to the incident." Owen's eyes narrowed like he'd just been handed an easy tool. Batman didn't move. Hopper didn't miss the way Owen's mind shifted. Owens looked at Batman. "You see? That's why we need to manage this." Batman's voice stayed cold. "You're going to use that?" Owens didn't answer. He didn't have to. That night, Hawkins felt like it was waiting. Not just for monsters. For stories. Hopper drove past a diner and saw two people whispering and pointing at the shadows between buildings. He drove past the school and saw teens hanging around like they wanted to dare each other into fear. Hopper hated that too. He hated that fear could be entertainment. Batman moved through the town without being seen. Rooftops, alley edges, tree lines. He watched people watch the dark. He used the dark, but he didn't like it when the dark used them. In an empty lot behind a small hardware store, he met Steve and Dustin. Steve held a bag in both hands, like it weighed more than it should. Dustin looked proud. Batman looked at the bag. "What is that?" Dustin beamed. "Supplies." Steve groaned. He basically robbed the store. "We paid," Dustin snapped, "with money." Batman's head tilted. "Where did the money come from?" Dustin pointed at Steve, the mom of the group. Steve glared. "I hate you." Batman opened the bag. Inside, fishing line, nails, flares, duct tape, a cheap soldering kit, and 3 small flashlights with plastic bodies. Batman stared at the plastic flashlights for half a second. Steve sighed. "I know, they're trash." Batman's voice was flat. "They'll work." Dustin pumped a fist. "Yes!" Batman took the fishing line out. He tested it with 2 fingers, then nodded once. "We can use this." Steve blinked. "We can?" Batman didn't explain. He just moved, already mapping traps in his head. Dustin whispered to Steve, "Legendary crafting." Steve whispered back, "Shut up." Batman heard it. He didn't comment. He just kept building. In the Upside Down, there was no sun. But there was still time. Vecna didn't need clocks. He felt time in pulses, in fear, in the way minds warmed when they panicked. He stood in his ruined space like it was a throne room made of rot and memory. Vines moved like slow muscles along the walls. Spores drifted in the air like dust. He closed his eyes and reached. He found the children first. Easy. Bright. Loud feelings. Strong bonds. He tasted the sheriff. Heavy guilt. Strong love. A stubborn wall. He tasted the doctor. Fear hidden under calm. Then he reached for the new thing. The masked mind. It was sharp. Controlled. Built like a maze with traps. Vecna touched the edge and found pain right away, locked behind steel doors. Vecna liked pain. Pain made good handles. He pressed gently. A memory tried to rise. A gunshot. A scream. An alley. The mind shoved back. Not with power like 11. With discipline. Vecna's mouth curled, almost amused. So this one was a builder. A planner. A man who had turned his own fear into a weapon. Vecna understood that. Vecna also understood the flaw inside it. Control. The need to stop the fall. Vecna didn't rush. He didn't have to. He set a small hook and pulled away. Not enough to break the mind. Enough to leave a question. Enough to make the masked man wonder if the door was really closed. Vecna opened his eyes. The air trembled as if it had listened. Good, Vecna whispered, and the word turned into a thin ripple in the dead air. He would not fight the masked man like a beast. He would fight him like a story. He would bring him choices. He would bring him children in danger. He would bring him the one thing he could never ignore. Batman felt the first hit on a rooftop behind the library. It wasn't like a punch. It was like a cold finger pressing at the edge of thought. The alley came without warning. The smell of wet pavement. The sound of a single shot. The shape of his mother's pearls bouncing on the ground. Batman's breath tightened. He clenched his hands once, then forced them open. Not now. He scanned his surroundings fast. Night Street. No movement. No one near. The attack wasn't outside. It was inside. His pulse rose. He forced it down. In. Out. Count. Anchor. He pressed his gloved fingers to the edge of his utility belt and felt the hard shape of a tool. Real. Solid. He focused on sound. A car far away. A dog barking. Wind moving leaves. The alley faded, like a screen shutting off. Batman didn't relax. He moved. He dropped into the shadows and made for the sheriff's station. He needed to adjust the plan. He needed to warn them. And he needed to admit one hard truth. This enemy could touch him too. The next day, the argument finally happened. Hopper tried to keep it from happening. It happened anyway. It started in the back room with the board and ended with voices raised in the hall. Nancy wanted to push. She wanted to dig into the Creel House area, the old tunnels, anything that smelled like a clue. Batman wanted structure first. Safe rooms, signals, training. You're wasting time, Nancy snapped. Batman's voice stayed level. I'm saving lives. By hiding? Nancy shot back. By preparing, Batman corrected. Steve raised both hands. Okay. Everyone calm down. Max's eyes flashed. He's right about one thing, she said, voice tight. If he gets in your head and you run alone, you die. Nancy's face tightened. I'm not running alone. Robin leaned against the wall, arms crossed. You say that now. Dustin blurted, we can do both. Build safe rooms and solve the mystery. Multi-questing. Batman looked at him. No. Dustin deflated. Batman turned back to Nancy. If you go into that house without a plan, you become a target. Nancy's voice dropped. We are targets already. Batman's eyes held hers. Then we don't make it easy. Hopper stepped in. Enough. We do this his way for now. Nancy stared at Hopper like Hopper had betrayed her. Hopper's voice was hard. Because I said so. Nancy's jaw clenched. Then she nodded once, sharp and angry. Batman watched her. He saw the same fire he'd seen in Gotham. People who couldn't stop chasing the truth even when it hurt them. It was brave. It was dangerous. Batman's voice softened a fraction. I'm not stopping you forever. I'm slowing you down long enough to keep you alive. Nancy didn't answer, but her eyes shifted, just a little, like she heard him. That night, Batman made his pivot. He stopped thinking only about gates and claws and bodies. He started building defenses for the mind. He wrote a new set of rules and taped them onto the board where everyone could see. If you feel it, say the word. If you see something impossible, grab your buddy. If you hear the ticking, find light. If you feel alone, call. Simple. Real. Not perfect. But better than fear with no plan. And somewhere in the dark behind the veil, Vecna listened. Not angry, interested. Because the masked man was learning too. A week later, Hawkins had something it didn't have before. A system. It wasn't pretty. It wasn't official. It was built out of fear and duct tape. But it worked. Batman moved through a small basement under the school after hours, turning it into a safe room. He didn't call it that out loud. He just did it. Flashlights on hooks, batteries in a labeled box, a radio station written on the wall, a simple map with arrows and exits. He taught Steve how to set trip lines using fishing line and bells. Steve stared at the line like it was a math problem. "You're sure this won't trip us?" Batman's voice was dry. "Then don't walk into it." Steve frowned. "Helpful." Dustin ran in holding a cardboard box full of random parts. "I found more." Batman looked inside. Old walkie parts, a broken baby monitor, a flashlight with a cracked lens. Batman stared at it, then nodded. "Good." Dustin looked like he'd just been handed a medal. "Yes, crafting continues." Batman didn't smile, but he used the parts. He built listening posts. Not fancy ones, simple ones. A baby monitor taped to a wall that would hiss if the air went cold. A radio tuned to static, because static always changed when the upside down pressed close. Robin watched him work and shook her head. "You are the most intense DIY person I have ever met." Batman didn't look up. "This isn't a hobby." Robin muttered, "Could have fooled me." Outside, Hopper watched through a doorway, arms crossed. He didn't like the idea of kids training. He liked the idea of kids surviving. He didn't say that out loud. Nancy and Robin didn't stop investigating. They just got smarter about it. They used Owens, not by trusting him, by listening to what he tried not to say. Robin waited until Owens was distracted in the hallway of a temporary office near the station. She slid close with a friendly smile. "Hey, Doc," she said. "Easy." Owens looked up. Polite. "Robin." Robin held up a clipboard like she belonged. "Quick question. That weird energy spike the other night, the one that made your lights go nuts, is that normal for your chemical leak?" Owens' smile twitched. "We're not discussing." Robin leaned in a fraction. "Because we already know it wasn't chemical. I'm just asking if it was a spike, like the other times." Owens hesitated. Nancy, across the room, watched his eyes flick toward a locked file cabinet. Robin saw it too. Owens cleared his throat. "Please don't push." Robin's smile stayed sweet. Too late. That night, Nancy picked the lock, not with fancy tools, with a bent hairpin and stubborn focus. Batman didn't help her do it. He didn't even know she would. But when she did, she proved something about herself. She didn't need permission to chase the truth. Inside the file cabinet were reports, not full truths, but enough. One report caught Nancy's eye. An anomaly event. Time stamped close to the night Batman arrived. Notes about an energy pattern Owens had never seen before. Notes that said the tier reacted like it had been provoked. Robin leaned over Nancy's shoulder. So, his arrival didn't just happen near the problem. Nancy's eyes hardened. It hit the problem. Robin swallowed, like two storms hitting each other. Nancy nodded slowly, or like the Upside Down noticed him and woke up harder. Robin whispered, "That's not great." Nancy stared at the paper. "No, but it explains why it's getting worse." They didn't take the whole file. Nancy wasn't stupid. She knew people would notice. They took one page. One page was enough. They brought it to Batman and Hopper. Batman read it once, then again. His face didn't change, but Hopper saw his shoulders tighten. Hopper's voice was low. "This says your arrival caused a spike." Batman's voice was calm. "It says the tier reacted." Hopper stared. So this is your fault? Batman didn't flinch. No. Hopper blinked. That was fast. Batman's eyes stayed on the page. I didn't choose this, and the enemy was here before me. Hopper grunted. Okay. Good. Batman looked up. But it matters. It means the enemy sees me as a factor. Nancy crossed her arms. So what do we do? Batman's answer came clean. We assume it will target me. Max muttered. Great. Batman continued. And we assume it will target you to reach me. The room tightened. Mike's jaw clenched. Then you should leave. The words hit harder than Mike meant. Batman didn't snap back. He didn't glare. He just looked at Mike. Mike's eyes were wet with anger and fear. If you leave, maybe it stops pushing. Eleven's voice was quiet. No. Mike turned to her. Eleven shook her head once. He is not the reason. He is another problem for him. Batman watched her. 11 looked at Batman again, and for a second, her face softened. He fights, she said, even when scared. Batman's throat tightened under the mask. He didn't speak. Hopper spoke instead, voice rough. He stays. Mike looked away, furious and helpless. Batman didn't blame him. Fear made people look for simple math. If A arrived and B got worse, then A must be the cause. But life wasn't that neat. Neither was Vecna. The next attack didn't come as claws. It came as silence. It was early evening when the radio started to hiss. Not a normal hiss. A thick, wet sound, like the air was breathing. Dustin heard it first in the school basement safe room. He froze, eyes wide, then slammed the talk button. "Cab," he said fast. "Cab, cab, cab." Static answered. Then Will's voice came through, shaky. "I feel it. I feel it." Hopper's hand tightened around his own radio at the station. Batman was already moving. He didn't run in a straight line. He never did. He moved through alleys and back paths, using shadows and fences. He hit the school basement door and stepped inside. The room was full of light. Flashlights were lined up and on. Steve stood with a bat. Nancy held a screwdriver like a weapon. Robin held a radio and looked like she wanted to punch it. Will sat on a bench, breathing fast. Batman's voice cut clean through it. "Will, look at me." Will tried. His eyes kept darting like something was flashing in the corners. Batman stepped closer, staying low so he didn't feel like a monster himself. "Tell me what you feel." Will swallowed. "Cold. Like the air is wrong. Like it's coming." Batman nodded. "Good. That's information." Will blinked, confused. Batman's voice stayed steady. "Name 5 things you can see." Will's breath hitched. "Flashlight, map, Steve, Dustin, door." Batman nodded. 4 things you can touch." Will's hands clenched. "Bench, my jacket, the radio, my jeans." Batman kept going, calm. 3 things you can hear." Will listened hard. "Dustin breathing, the lights buzzing, your voice." The ticking in Will's face faded a little, his shoulders lowered by a fraction. Batman saw it. Anchors worked. Not perfectly, but enough. Then the lights flickered. Not inside the basement. Outside. The air above Hawkins went cold like someone poured ice over the town. And the thing Vecna had learned from the last fight showed itself. The Demobats didn't rush towards sonic traps anymore. They went for wires. They went for radios. They went for light sources. A swarm hit the school roof like a living storm. Steve's face went pale. We're not supposed to be here." Batman turned to Hopper on the radio. "Where are you?" Hopper's voice was tense. "Outside, heading to you." Batman snapped. "Get people inside, now." He moved, up the stairs. Fast, silent. He hit the hallway and felt the temperature drop. He saw the first bat smash into a ceiling light, shattering it. Glass rained down. Then more came. Batman threw a small flare. It hissed into bright light and heat. The bats recoiled, shrieking. So they still hated light. Good. Batman swung his grapnel lineup, hooking a pipe. He yanked himself to the ceiling edge, out of their main path. They moved like a swarm, not like dumb animals. They split. Some went for the flare. Some went for the hallway lights. Some dove at him. Batman pulled a compact device and snapped it forward. A net of thin cable spread and caught 3 bats mid-air, slamming them into the wall. He dropped from the ceiling, landing behind the swarm's center, and drove a hard kick into a bat's body, launching it into another. He didn't waste time celebrating hits. He looked for what mattered. Why here? Why now? He heard it then. A deep, low vibration through the walls. Not bats. Vines. The school floor trembled as something pressed under it, like roots trying to break through. Batman's jaw tightened. "Inside!" He snapped into the radio. "Basement!" Dustin's voice yelled back, panicked. "We are in the basement!" Batman's eyes widened, then moved to the safe corner. "Now!" He sprinted down the hall, throwing another flare to hold the bats back. He reached the stairs again and took them 2 at a time. In the basement, the walls sweated cold. The radios hissed louder. The floor cracked. A thin vine speared up through the concrete like a spear. Then another. Then another. Steve swung his bat at one. It wrapped around the bat and yanked. Steve yelped and almost fell. Batman grabbed the vine with a gloved hand, planted his boots, and cut it with a blade from his belt in one clean motion. The vine thrashed like it was angry. Nancy screamed as another vine shot toward her ankle. Batman moved between them and sliced it before it could wrap. Robin's voice shook. "Okay, so the basement is suddenly not the safe room." Batman's voice stayed calm. Safe doesn't mean perfect. It means better. He looked at 11. L. 11 stood, breathing hard, already like her body knew what was coming. Batman didn't ask her to lift the whole world. He gave her a clear, small target. "Hold the floor," he said. "Just the floor. Don't chase anything else." 11's eyes narrowed in focus. She nodded. Her hand lifted. The concrete stopped cracking. The vines pushed, but stalled like they hit a wall. 11's face tightened. Blood appeared again under her nose. Mike stepped close, terrified. "Elle, stop! Stop!" Batman's voice was firm. "Mike, anchor her!" Mike froze, then nodded fast. He started speaking, steady and low, telling her what was real. Batman turned to the others. "Out! Now!" Dustin's eyes went wide, but Batman grabbed Dustin's shoulder once, not hard, just enough to make him listen. "Move!" They moved. Steve first, pulling Dustin. Nancy and Robin next. Max and Lucas guiding Will. Hopper burst into the basement doorway with his gun up, eyes wild. "What the hell is—" Batman's voice cut. "Upstairs, now!" Hopper didn't argue. He saw the vines. He saw 11 holding the floor with a shaking hand. He swore and herded them up. Batman stayed with 11. 11's breath was ragged. "It's strong," she whispered. Batman's voice stayed close, controlled. "You're stronger." 11 shook her head. "Not forever." Batman nodded. "Then we don't wait forever." He pulled a small pack from his belt, pressed it to the floor near a crack, and stuck it down with tape so it wouldn't slide. It wasn't a bomb. Not like that. It was a heat charge, a controlled burn. He clicked it on and stepped back. "Fire?" 11 whispered, nervous. Batman answered, "Heat. The vines don't like heat." The pack glowed and hissed. The crack filled with hot light. The vine that tried to push through recoiled, snapping back like it had touched a stove. 11's shoulders dropped a fraction. The strain eased. Batman looked at her. "Now, we go." 11 stumbled, and Batman caught her elbow. steadying her without carrying her like she was helpless. They moved upstairs. Behind them, the basement floor groaned. Not broken, but threatened. Outside, the demobats shrieked and scattered as more flares lit the yard. Hopper shoved the doors shut and jammed a chair under the handle like it was a war movie. Steve panted, "Why is your life like this?" Batman didn't answer. He was listening. Because the bats weren't the main point. The vines weren't the main point. This was another test. They had built lights and radios and routines. The enemy hit lights and radios and routines. It was learning. Batman's eyes narrowed as he stared at the dark windows. Then, inside his skull, the cold finger pressed again. This time it didn't show the alley first. It showed Hawkins. It showed kids dead in the street. It showed Hopper alone. It showed 11 collapsing, helpless. It showed Batman standing there. Too slow, too controlled, too late. The vision tried to make him move, tried to make him panic. Batman's hands curled. He forced them open. He breathed in, out. He focused on the weight of his cape, the sound of Steve breathing, the smell of burned concrete. Real, not real. The vision cracked. He felt it pull back, but not before it left one last image, a tall shape in a broken house, a clock sound, a promise without words. Batman's throat tightened. Hopper noticed. "You okay?" Batman didn't lie. He didn't give the whole truth either. He said, "It's in my head too." The room went still. Dustin whispered, "Oh." Max's face tightened like she'd been punched. Hopper's voice was rough, quieter now. "So what do we do?" Batman looked at the group. At their fear, at their courage, at the way they still stayed. His voice came out low and steady. "We keep building doors," Batman said. "We keep them closed." And when the others moved to check 11, Batman stepped aside with Hopper for one moment, out of earshot. Hopper's eyes were hard. "If it can get in your head, can it control you?" Batman's voice was calm but honest. "It can try." Hopper's jaw clenched. "That's a problem." Batman met his gaze. "Then watch me." Hopper blinked. "What?" Batman didn't flinch. "You wanted a reason to trust me. Here it is. Watch what I do when it pushes." Hopper stared at him for a long beat. Then Hopper nodded once, slow. "All right," Hopper said. "I'm watching." Batman didn't say thank you. He didn't need to. Trust wasn't a speech. It was staying. It was watching. It was choosing not to pull the trigger when fear told you to. Outside, the last demobats faded into the trees. The town was still standing. Their system had not stopped the attack, but it kept people from dying in blind panic. That mattered. And far away, behind the veil, Vecna learned something too. The masked man didn't break when pressed, so the next time, Vecna wouldn't just press. He would tempt. He would offer control. He would offer an ending. And he would do it where the masked man could not ignore him. Not in a battlefield. In the heart of the case. The first thing Hawkins noticed, after a few weeks, was that the dark stopped owning every inch of the town. Not because the dark got weaker, because people stopped giving it free wins. There were flashlights in glove boxes now, batteries in kitchen drawers, a radio channel written on sticky notes by the phone. Parents who used to laugh at walkie-talkies now kept them charged. Hopper didn't call it a plan out loud. He called it common sense, like the word made it less scary. Batman didn't correct him. Batman didn't talk much at all, unless there was a reason. Most nights, he moved while the town slept. Roof lines, tree lines, the edge of the woods that led to the places where the air turned cold and wrong. He listened for the changes. Static that wasn't normal static. A breeze that smelled like wet rot. A pressure behind the eyes that meant the enemy was close. He also watched people. It felt strange to admit, even to himself, but the town had a rhythm. Kids on bikes, teens acting tough, parents trying to pretend nothing was happening. It looked normal from a distance. Up close, he saw the tight shoulders, the quick glances, the way fear lived under the skin. He didn't judge them for it. Fear was honest. The problem was what people did with it. A few nights each week, he met the group in quiet places. The school basement safe room, an old storage building near the field. Once, a church basement because it had thick walls and a backup generator. They trained in small things that saved lives. How to breathe when panic hit. How to spot a friend who was slipping into a trance. How to move as pairs, not as scattered sparks. How to keep light moving instead of standing still like bait. Steve complained the whole time, but he showed up. Dustin acted like it was the best club in the world. He kept trying to name everything. "This is your grappling hook face," Dustin said once, bouncing on his toes. Batman didn't look up from tightening a line. "It's called a line." Dustin whispered to Robin, loud on purpose. "He's allergic to fun." Robin whispered back, "He's also allergic to sleep." Nancy took notes without being asked. Nancy always took notes. She still wanted the truth, and she still wanted it fast, but she had stopped trying to do it alone. Lucas watched everyone's choices like he was trying to stop a bad one before it started. Max stayed close to the exits. Will stayed closest to the light. 11 said very little, but she listened to everything. Batman watched 11 too. Not like Owens watched her. Not like the military watched her. Batman watched her the way you watched someone holding up a wall. With respect. With worry. With a plan to make sure she didn't have to hold it alone. He brought her small tasks instead of impossible ones. Hold the floor for 5 seconds. Push this object, not the whole room. Find the cold spot. Then stop. Each time she did it, her face tightened with effort, but her eyes stayed steady. She didn't want to be treated like glass. Batman didn't treat her like glass. He treated her like a teammate who deserved a safety net. Hopper didn't trust Batman more because of speeches. He trusted him more because Batman kept his rules. He didn't use the kids as bait. He didn't chase a monster if it meant leaving someone behind. He didn't kill. Hopper saw Batman take chances that would have made a selfish man run. He saw him take hits meant for others. He saw him stand between rifles and a girl. Hopper didn't say, "Thank you." But one night, after a patrol near the woods, Hopper said, "You could have left." Batman didn't stop walking. "So could you." Hopper grunted. "Yeah, guess we're both idiots." Batman didn't correct that either. Owens stayed in town, in a temporary office behind more fences and more polite lies. He didn't stop trying to get control. He just changed tactics. He sent messages through Hopper, offers, equipment, help. One box arrived with real tools in it, actual lab-grade sensors, clean batteries, packaged and labeled. Dustin opened it like it was treasure from a dragon. Batman looked at the box, then at the sticker on the side. He didn't need a microscope to read the message. Owens wanted Batman to get used to being supplied. Owens wanted Batman to depend on him. Batman closed the box and slid it under a table. Dustin stared, hurt. "Why would you?" "Because it's a leash," Batman said. Dustin blinked. "But it's a really nice leash." Batman's voice stayed flat. "Exactly." So they kept using the small-town substitutes. Duct tape, fishing line, flashlights from the hardware store that died too fast. Steve complained, and still paid for half of it. "Does Wayne Tech not exist here?" Robin asked once, half joking. Batman paused. "Just a fraction." "No." Robin squinted at him. That was a weird pause. Batman walked away. The routines made the town steadier. But they didn't make the enemy go away. Because the enemy was not a wild animal. It was watching. It was choosing. And it was waiting for the right moment to stop being a storm and start being a voice. That moment came on a night when the air was too still. Batman stood on the roof of the library, looking down at empty streets. A few houses had lights on. Most did not. The pressure arrived without warning, cold at the edge of thought, a ticking sound that wasn't in the air. His muscles tensed, then loosened by choice. He didn't fight the first wave. He anchored himself first. He named what he could see. He listened for what was real. Then the vision pushed through anyway. It wasn't Hawkins this time. It was Gotham. Rain on black pavement. A shadowed alley. His parents. The gun. Batman's breath tightened. He felt the old grief slam into him like a door opening fast. Then the vision changed. It showed something new. The same alley, but the gun did not fire. His father grabbed the man's wrist. His mother pulled him back. They ran. The scene rewound and played again, like someone was offering a different ending. Batman's jaw clenched. A voice slid into the edge of the vision. Calm, patient, too sure. You build rules, the voice said. Not loud, not even angry. You build walls. You build plans. Batman didn't answer. The voice continued anyway, and still, children suffer. The vision shifted. Hawkins. The school hallway. Vines. A cracked basement. Eleven's knees buckling. Mike screaming her name. Will shaking as the ticking ate his calm. Batman felt anger rise. He shoved it down before it could turn into panic. The voice was almost gentle now. I can stop it, it said. I can close your wounds. I can close theirs. Batman forced his eyes open. He was still on the library roof. Night air. Distant car. Dog barking. But the cold stayed pressed against his mind like a hand. I can give you control, the voice said. You hate chaos. You hate fear. You hate how small humans are. Batman stared into the dark. His voice came out low. You're not offering help. I'm offering an end, the voice said. Batman's hands curled, then relaxed. At a price. A slow, pleased pause. You learn quickly, the voice said. The vision returned. His parents again. Alive. Smiling. Saying his name. Then Hawkins again. Kids laughing in sunlight. No scars. No nightmares. No gates. Batman felt the temptation like a pull in his ribs. Not because he wanted power. Because he wanted the pain to stop. Because he wanted to be sure. The voice sensed the pull and pressed harder. Say yes, it whispered, and no one will ever be taken from you again. Batman closed his eyes for half a second. He saw the truth behind the offer. A cage. A world where one mind decided what was safe. A world that looked like peace and felt like a prison. Batman opened his eyes. He spoke into the cold. No. The pressure tightened. The voice turned sharper, finally showing teeth. Why? It hissed. You could save them. Batman's answer didn't shake. Not like you. The ticking grew louder. The vision tried again, this time crueler. It showed him saying yes. It showed Hawkins safe. Then it showed Gotham safe. Then it showed his hands covered in blood that wasn't his, because he had done the one thing he never allowed himself to do. He had crossed the line. The vision tried to make him believe that control would force him to become a killer anyway, so he should accept it and pretend he had no choice. Batman felt his stomach twist. He recognized the trick. The enemy wasn't just showing fear. It was trying to rewrite his rules. Batman breathed in, out. He anchored on something simple and real. A scar under the mask edge. A bruise in his shoulder from last week. A promise made to a child in an alley long ago. I choose, Batman said. The cold hand slipped. Not gone, but pulled back like it had found a lock it couldn't pick fast. A final whisper drifted up from the dark. Then choose again, it said, at the house. Batman's eyes narrowed. The Creel house, the heart of Vecna's story. The the place where the enemy felt closest to the world. Batman didn't move for a full minute after the pressure faded. Then he activated his radio. "Hopper," he said. The reply came fast, tense. "Yeah?" "It's time," Batman said. Hopper went silent. Then, "Where?" Batman's voice was steady. "The Creel house." Hopper exhaled hard. "Of course it is." Batman didn't smile. "Get everyone. We do this together." Hopper's voice was rough. "You sure?" Batman looked out over Hawkins like it was his city now, at least for this part of his life. "No," he said honestly, "but I'm ready." They met in the school basement safe room because it was the one place that felt like theirs, not the government's. Everyone showed. Even Max, who tried to act like she didn't want to. Even Steve, who complained and still brought extra batteries. Even Robin, who made jokes with a tight face. Nancy came in with her notebook and a set jaw. Will came in with Joyce at his side, eyes wide but determined. Mike held Eleven's hand. Eleven's face was calm. Her eyes were not. Hopper stood near the door like he was guarding the whole room. Batman stood at the board. He didn't waste time. "He contacted me," Batman said. The group went still. Dustin whispered, "Like directly?" Batman nodded. "Yes." Max's throat tightened. "Offer?" Batman looked at her. "Yes." Nancy's voice was sharp. "What did he offer?" Batman didn't dodge it. "Control. An end. A lie that looks like peace." Mike's jaw clenched. "And you said no." Batman met his gaze. "Yes." A11 watched Batman closely, like she needed to see if he was telling the truth. Batman turned to the board and pointed at the Creel house pin. "He wants us there," Batman said. "That means he thinks he has the advantage there." Robin swallowed. "That's not comforting." Batman's voice stayed calm. "It's useful." Hopper's eyes narrowed. "How?" "Because he's choosing a place," Batman said. "He's not striking anywhere. He's inviting. That means he needs something." Nancy's eyes sharpened. "A link." Batman nodded. "A weak point we can hit." 11's voice was small but clear. "His mind is there." Batman looked at her. "Yes, and he's tied to this world through it." Mike's face tightened. "So we go in and—" "What? You punch his brain?" Steve muttered. "Please don't punch brains." Batman didn't react. "We do 3 things." He held up one finger. "We keep Elle safe." Second finger. "We keep each other anchored. No one goes alone. No one chases a vision." Third finger. "We force him to split his focus." Lucas frowned. "How do we do that?" Batman pointed to a stack of gear on the table. Not fancy, but prepared. Flashlights, flares, small radios, mirrors, fishing line, nails, a cassette player. Max's eyes flicked to the cassette player, and something raw crossed her face. Batman noticed. "Music is an anchor," he said simply. "We use it." Robin leaned in. "Okay, so we go to the murder house with flashlights and a mixtape. Great." Batman looked at her. "And a plan." He assigned roles in short, clean orders. Nancy and Robin. Watch for patterns. Keep eyes on the environment. Call out changes. Steve and Lucas. Protect the rear. Carry the extra light and flares. Keep the escape route clear. Hopper. Coordinate from the outside with a fallback car and radio link. Mike. Stay with 11. Keep her anchored. Will and Max. Stay in the safe zone behind the main line, and speak up the second the pressure hits. Dustin opened his mouth. Batman looked at him. "Dustin." Dustin closed his mouth, then opened it again. "Okay, but I'm still coming." Batman stared. Dustin stared back, brave and scared at the same time. Batman didn't like it. Batman understood it. "You stay with Steve," Batman said. Steve groaned. "Why is this my job?" "Because you won't run," Batman said. Steve blinked. Then, quietly, "Yeah, I won't." Hopper watched this exchange like he was watching a family argue at a kitchen table. Then Hopper cleared his throat. One more thing. Everyone looked at him. Hopper glanced at Batman. If this goes bad, I need to know who you are. The room tightened. Dustin's eyes went huge. Nancy's pen stopped moving. Batman held Hopper's gaze for a long moment. Then Batman spoke, low. Not here. Hopper nodded. Fine. Batman's voice didn't change, but you'll know. That was the closest thing to a promise Batman gave. It was enough. They moved at dusk. No sirens, no government escort, no bright show. Just a car on a quiet road with a group of kids who shouldn't have been doing this, and adults who knew they couldn't stop them. The Creel house rose in the distance like a broken tooth. Even from outside, the air felt wrong. Colder. Heavier. Batman stepped out first. He didn't hesitate at the porch. He didn't stare at the windows. He didn't let the house become a monster in his mind. It was a location. A suspect location. He treated it like one. Inside, the dust smelled old. The wood creaked underfoot. Light from flashlights cut thin lanes through the dark. The ticking began almost at once. Will flinched. Max's hand tightened around her flashlight. Batman lifted a hand. Cab, he said. It was almost funny that the code word was so normal. But it worked. Everyone tightened into formation. Everyone moved closer to light and each other. The house didn't like that. A shadow moved across the wall, too long to be a person. Robin's voice shook, trying to be brave. Okay, great. It's doing the thing. Batman moved forward room by room, scanning, listening, mapping. Fishing line traps went up behind them fast, Steve's hand steady now because fear had turned into focus. Dustin whispered, I can't believe this is working. Steve whispered back, don't jinx it. A low vibration traveled through the floorboards. Vines. Nancy's flashlight beam caught a thin crack in the wall that wasn't there before. It pulsed like a wound. Batman stepped closer, eyes narrowed. Eleven's breathing changed. Mike grabbed her hand tighter. Elle, look at me! Look at me! Eleven's eyes drifted toward the crack anyway, like it was pulling on her. Batman spoke, not loud, but clear. Elle, stay with Mike. 11 blinked hard, then nodded once, fighting the pull. The house shifted. A hallway seemed to stretch longer than it should. A door appeared where there shouldn't be one. Robin's voice went tight. That door was not here. Batman didn't argue with the house. He didn't waste time on its tricks. He touched the wall near the door. Cold. He held up 2 fingers and tapped the wood. Hollow. Trap, Batman said. Steve swallowed. So we don't go in? Batman looked at the crack, then at 11. We don't go where it wants. We go where it leaks. He moved past the false door and toward their stairs. The ticking grew louder. Each step up felt like stepping into deeper water. Max's flashlight flickered. She sucked in a breath, panic rising. Batman's voice cut clean. Max, name 5 things you see. Max blinked, anger and fear mixing. Stairs, your cape, Steve's stupid hair, dust. They're the banister. Batman nodded. Good. Max's breath steadied. They reached the top landing. The air up here was colder still, like the house was holding its own winter. A child's room sat at the end of the hall. Batman knew without knowing that this was the center. The ticking stopped. For 1 second, there was no sound. Then the voice arrived, not from the air, but from inside them. So many rules, Vecna said. Will gasped. His knees bent. Joyce, outside in the car with Hopper's backup team on the radio, felt her own heart slam, even from a distance, like the town itself had flinched. Hopper, on the porch below with the radio pressed to his ear, snapped, Talk to me! Inside, Batman didn't answer Vecna with anger. He answered with action. He pointed. Lights. Now. Steve and Lucas flooded the hall with flashlights and a flare. Heat and light washed the old wood. The house groaned like it hated being exposed. 11 stepped forward, hand raised, eyes sharp. Vecna's voice softened, almost kind again. Look at you, it said. A child holding up a world. How many times will you bleed for them? 11's hand trembled. Mike stepped in front of her, voice steady. Elle, with me. With me. Vecna's voice slid sideways. And you, it said to Batman. You wear fear like armor, but inside, you're still that child in the alley. Batman's throat tightened. The vision tried to open. The alley, the gun, the pearls. Batman felt the pull. He forced his focus outward. He looked at his team. He looked at the hall. He looked at the crack in the wall, pulsing like a heartbeat. Now, Batman said to 11, voice firm. Hit the crack. Not him. The crack. 11's eyes snapped to the crack. Her hand jerked toward it. The wall bowed inward, like it was made of rubber. A deep sound rolled through the house, like something in the other world had been punched. The crack widened. Cold air poured out. And with it came the swarm. Demobats exploded into the hall, screaming. Steve's face went pale. Oh no. Batman moved like he had been waiting for this. He fired his grapnel line and swung up, pulling himself above the first wave. He dropped a net into the center of the swarm, catching several mid-flight. Lucas threw a flare down the hall. Heat and light made the bats recoil, but not all of them. Some pushed through, aiming for the lights themselves. Batman saw the adaptation and adjusted mid-motion. He didn't try to win with one trick. He layered them. Smoke to break lines. Light to force distance. Nets to slow. Movement to keep the swarm from locking on. He landed beside Steve and shoved him back from a diving bat. Rear line, Batman snapped. Steve nodded, swinging hard and clean now, not wild. Nancy and Robin held their ground, calling out where the bats were splitting. Left! Ceiling! Behind! Will cried out as the pressure in his head spiked. Max grabbed his arm and pulled him into the brightest patch of the hall. Cab, Max said through clenched teeth, like she was trying to bite fear back. Batman heard it. Good. Then Vecna's real move hit. The house flashed. For a split second, every hallway turned into a memory for someone. Nancy saw Barb. Steve saw himself alone, watching everyone else get hurt. Hopper, down below, saw the cabin, the loss, the empty chair at his table. 11 saw the lab. Batman saw the alley again. This time the vision didn't offer peace. It offered blame. It showed him failing every time. It showed the kids dying because he wasn't enough. Batman's breath hitched. His hands tightened. The vision tried to make him rush, to abandon formation, to chase the source alone. Batman felt the exact moment Vecna expected him to break, and Batman chose not to. He dropped his gaze to his glove. He pressed his thumb into a bruised spot under the armor plate, hard enough to sting. Real pain, real body, real now. The alley flickered. Batman lifted his head and spoke, not to the vision, but to the team. Stay, he barked. Stay with the light. His voice cut through the fog like a hook. Mike clung to it too. Elle, Mike shouted. Here, here, here. 11's eyes shook as the lab flashed around her, but Mike's voice kept landing like a rope. 11 screamed, half anger, half effort, and shoved again at the crack. The wall bent more. The crack widened to a thin tear. For 1 second, Batman saw beyond it. Not a full world, just a glimpse. Red lightning in dead air, vines moving like veins. A tall shape far back, watching. Vecna wasn't fully here. He was tethered. Batman understood. This wasn't a fist fight. It was a connection. He moved to the edge of the tear, planted a device on the wood, and slapped it down with tape. Dustin, eyes wide, blurted, Is that another heat pack?" Batman didn't answer. He just triggered it. Heat flared along the edges of the tear. The wood smoked. The tear shuddered like it hated being burned. Vecna's voice sharpened, angry now. "Stop." Batman didn't stop. He added a second pack, then a third. Not enough to burn the house down. Enough to make the tear unstable. 11's hand shook harder, but her eyes stayed locked. Her nose bled again. Mike's voice turned desperate. "Elle, please!" Batman snapped. 10 seconds! Hopper's voice crackled through the radio from below, strained. "What's happening up there?" Batman didn't reply. He didn't have time. Vecna pressed harder, and the vision finally changed tactics again. It offered Batman one perfect moment. His parents alive, standing in front of him. His mother reached out. His father smiled. "Bruce," his mother said. The name hit like a bullet because it wasn't a random guess. Vecna had dug deep enough to find the truth. Dustin's eyes widened like he could feel the name even without hearing it. Batman's breath caught. For 1 second, he almost forgot the hall. Almost forgot the tear. Almost forgot everything but the old want to go home to a moment that never existed. Then Batman saw what Vecna really did. He used love like a knife. Batman's jaw clenched so hard it hurt. "No," he said again, louder now, rawer. He didn't swing at the vision. He didn't scream. He simply turned away from it, choosing the living over the dead. He looked at 11. "Now," Batman said. 11 screamed and pushed with everything she had. The tear buckled. The heat packs hissed. The edges of the rip curled inward, as if the world was trying to stitch itself shut. The demobats shrieked in panic, some diving back into the tear like rats running from fire. Vecna's voice roared, not in pain, but in fury at losing control of the moment. "You think you win?" it hissed. "You think discipline saves you?" Batman stepped forward to the edge of the closing tear, staring into the red dark beyond. His voice was cold and steady again. "Not forever," Batman said, "but long enough." The tear snapped tighter. Not closed, not clean, but narrower, unstable, flickering like a dying light. 11 collapsed to her knees. Mike caught her. Batman grabbed the cassette player from Robin's hands and slammed play. Music burst out. Too loud. Too real. The hall stopped warping. Will's shoulders dropped as if someone had taken a hand off his throat. Max breathed out a shaky laugh that sounded like a sob. The house groaned. The tear thinned more. Vecna's presence pulled back, not gone, but retreating like a predator that had been forced off its prey. The last thing Vecna left behind was a whisper, low and promised. "Again," it said, "you will choose again." Then the tear folded inward until it was just a crack, and then a scar in the wall. The cold lingered. The house stayed wrong, but the direct link was weakened. They didn't celebrate. Not really, because everyone could feel it. They hadn't ended the war. They had survived a battle. Hopper burst into the upstairs hall, breathing hard, gun up, eyes wild. He saw 11 on the floor. He saw the blood. He saw Batman standing at the wall like he was daring the dark to come back. Hopper's voice broke through his own fear. "Everyone out, now!" They moved fast, supporting 11, keeping Will close, keeping light aimed at corners. Outside, the night air felt warmer, almost normal, like it was ashamed of what it had been doing. They loaded into the car and drove without talking for most of the ride. Halfway back, Hopper spoke, voice low. "Owens is going to lose his mind when he hears about this." Robin muttered, assuming he hears the truth. Nancy's eyes stayed on the road ahead. "He'll hear something." Batman sat in the back, silent. The name still echoed inside him. Bruce. Vecna had said it on purpose. Vecna wanted Batman to feel seen. Batman hated that it worked. When they reached the station, Hopper pulled Batman aside near the back door, away from the others. Hopper's face was tight. "You said I'd know." Batman stared at him for a long moment. Then he did something he almost never did. He gave trust first. "My name is Bruce Wayne," Batman said. Hopper blinked. He didn't look impressed. He looked human, like he'd just been handed proof that the mask had a person inside it. He let out a slow breath. "Wayne," he repeated. "Okay." Batman's voice stayed controlled. "If I'm compromised, if it turns me..." Hopper cut in, harsh. "Don't say that." Batman didn't flinch. "If it happens, you don't hesitate." Hopper's eyes burned. "I said don't." Batman held his gaze. "You asked for a reason to trust me. That's it. I trust you with my name. You trust me with your town." Hopper stared at him for a long beat. Then Hopper nodded once. Slow. Heavy. "All right, Bruce," Hopper said, and the name sounded strange in his mouth. "I'm trusting you." Batman didn't relax, but something in his chest eased, just a fraction, because control wasn't the same as trust. And for the first time since he fell out of the sky, he felt like he wasn't holding the whole case alone. Owens tried to take control of the story the next morning. He pushed a statement through the town like it was a bandage over a wound. Electrical issues, trespassing teens, no ongoing threat. It didn't work as well as before, because people had seen too much, and because Hawkins had something new now, a routine, a plan, a way to survive long enough to question the lie. The military still watched the edges. They still wanted a target they could shoot. Owen still wanted to study what he couldn't own. But the town's fear didn't turn into blind panic as easily. It turned into action. In the following days, Batman stayed. He didn't announce it. He simply kept appearing where he was needed. A cold spot behind the grocery store that vanished when lights turned on. A radio hiss that warned them before the air turned wrong. A kid who froze in the street because the ticking returned, and a neighbor who walked him into a bright kitchen and said the code word like it was a prayer. Hawkins was still scared, but it was learning discipline. And somewhere behind the veil, Vecna was learning too. Because discipline wasn't fun to fight. It didn't scream. It didn't break easily. It stayed. Later that week, Batman stood alone in the woods at the edge of town, looking at a small listening post he'd built out of a baby monitor, a mirror, and duct tape. It was not elegant. It worked. Footsteps crunched behind him. Dustin appeared, holding a folded paper like a secret message. Batman didn't turn. "You followed me." Dustin shrugged like it was obvious. "You're bad at being alone. Like, emotionally." Batman's silence didn't deny it. Dustin held out the paper. "I made a list." Batman glanced down. It was an upgrade plan, written in messy handwriting. Better battery rotation. A labeling system. A way to make the baby monitor hiss louder using a cheap speaker. At the bottom, Dustin had drawn a tiny bat symbol next to a flashlight. Batman stared at it for a long moment. Dustin shifted awkwardly. It's not good. Probably." Batman folded the paper and slid it into a pocket inside his cape. "It's useful," he said. Dustin's face lit up like someone had turned a light on. "Yes." Batman looked out at the trees. "Go home, Dustin." Dustin hesitated. "Are you okay?" Batman didn't answer with the truth. Not the whole truth. He answered with something real. "I'm working." Dustin nodded like that made sense. "Cool. Cool. Cool. Cool." He ran off, and Batman listened until the footsteps faded. Then Batman turned and saw 11, standing a few steps away. No one had noticed her approach, not even him at first. She stood with her hands in her jacket pockets, eyes tired but clear. Batman's voice was low. "You should be resting." 11 shook her head once. "I'm not a baby." Batman's jaw tightened under the mask. "I know." 11 took a step closer. "He talked to you," she said. Batman didn't pretend. "Yes." 11's eyes narrowed. "He will talk again." Batman nodded. "Yes." 11 looked down at the ground for a second. "He offers things," she said. Batman didn't interrupt. 11 lifted her eyes. "He offered me a family." Batman felt something twist in his chest. 11's voice was simple. It was a lie, but it hurt. Batman's voice stayed steady. "Yes." 11 looked at him, direct as always. "How do you say no?" Batman was quiet for a moment. Then he answered in the simplest way he could. "You remember what's real," he said, "and you choose the living." 11 nodded slowly. She looked out at the woods, at Hawkins beyond them. "It's still here," she said. Batman nodded. "Yes." 11's face tightened, stubborn. "Then we stay." Batman looked at her, not like a weapon, like a person who had carried too much and still stood up. "Yes," Batman said. "We stay." They stood in silence for a few seconds. No speeches, no victory music, just two people who understood fear and refused to let it drive. In the distance, a porch light clicked on. A family stepped outside for a moment, saw the dark, then went back in and locked the door calmly. Flashlight in hand, radio on the counter, code word written by the phone. Life continued. Different now. Batman's cape shifted in the breeze. He looked out at Hawkins, like it was a city that hadn't asked for him, but needed him anyway. And somewhere far beyond the thin places in the world, the upside down pulsed like a slow heartbeat. Vecna was not gone. He was thinking. But so was Batman. And as long as the town could breathe, anchor, and choose each other, fear would not get a clean win.